And so I'm not going to ramble anymore, and I'm just going to thank all you guys for coming. But I'm going to hand it over to Debbie, and she's going to make you all cry, I think. So, so Debbie, you take it from here.
Thank you so much. You know, it has been bittersweet. Started the foundation because of the loss of my son, Marc Lee. He was the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, August 2nd, 2006. But I have been so blessed to meet so many amazing people, just like Eric and his wife and Buddy and so many other patriots who love our troops. And they understand that we live in America because of those who fought and defended us in our freedoms. And I always like to start by honoring and thanking those who did that. So if you served in the military, would you please stand up so that we can thank you for your service? Thank you so much. I think I got to shake most of your hands. If I didn't, please stop by and see me so I can thank you. But I tell them when I shake their hand, I never take for granted the freedoms that I have in America. And I know who paid that price, and I won't ever forget. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I would like to share with you the amazing story of my son, Marc Lee. How many of you have seen the movie American Sniper? And typically, it's about 90% of the people I talk to have seen that. In that movie, Chris's officer, the SEAL that was killed in combat, was my son. So in the funeral scene, that's supposed to be me reading part of his amazing last letter home. He wrote that letter about 2.5 weeks before he was killed, but that letter has inspired millions and millions of people around the world. And I'm going to read that to you and share that with you in a bit. But the day that we were notified that my son had been killed was August 2nd, 2006. And our calendars now kind of go before Marc died and after Marc died. That was a day that forever changed our life. I was at my small group at my Bible study, and my oldest son called. Nothing in his voice to alert me. He wasn't speaking too fast. He wasn't yelling. He just said, "Hey, Mom, where are you?" And so it's Wednesday night at the small group. Why, what's up? He said, "How long will it take you to get home?" I thought, well, that's kind of an odd question. I said, "I don't know, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, why, what's up?" And he said, "You just need to come home." The last time Marc was driving away before deployment, and Chris and I stood on the front lawn. And I looked over at him, I said, "I don't feel good about this." And he said, "Neither do I, Mom. Our personalities are not worriers, we're not fretters, that's just not who we are." So it wasn't like every day a black car went by that I go, "Is today the day?" We went on with life, we continued on. So when he called me and told me I needed to come home, I knew it was going to face me. And I got home, and my oldest son, Christopher, was just pacing on the sidewalk. And he said, "Mom, the Navy's here. And you know, if you served, when they come see you, it's not good news. If they've been wounded, they'll get you to where your wounded son, daughter, husband, spouse, whoever." And as I walked in, I heard those piercing words. It said, "We're sorry to inform you, your son, Marc Lee, has been killed in action." Toughest words that you could ever hear as a parent. And I began to get phone calls from his buddies in Iraq once they knew that I'd been notified, and we started to piece together his heroic actions that day. We were told that it was 115, 120 degrees in Ramadi, Iraq. It was 2006. You might remember the majority of our casualties were coming from Ramadi. But not only was it that extreme, sometimes we see those temperatures here. He carried the big gun, so he carried anywhere from 150 to 180 pounds in addition to his own weight. I've been over to Iraq twice. I'm the first Gold Star mom in history to visit the combat zone where their child was killed. I went out on patrol with the 1st to the 4th Cav 3 different times. I wore the body armor, but I was not carrying any weapons. I was not carrying any ammunition. The guys even had my water for me. But that vest weighed 35 pounds, and I couldn't wait to get back at the end of the day and rip that off. My shoulders were so tight, and I can't even imagine how you carry 150 to 180 pounds in 115 to 120 degree temperature. but they'd been fighting for 2 hours. Most intense firefight in Ramadi, Iraq. There were 4 SEALs that were on the rooftop. Mark's buddy Ryan had been severely injured. He'd taken shrapnel injuries. The bullets had hit his weapon and he had severe shrapnel injuries to the head. He dropped to the ground. 2 of those SEALs quickly dropped to help Ryan. Mark could have made that very same choice, but his choice that day was to stand up in the line of fire right where Ryan had just got shot. He had the big gun. He knew he could lay down some suppressive fire. But there was no medic on that roof, and they knew if Ryan stood a chance to survive, they had to get that medic up there. So not once, but again a second time, Mark made that choice to stand up in the line of fire, hoping they could all get down off of the roof. They all successfully got down, sent Ryan off for medical attention, and they headed back to the base, which I'm proud to tell you was named Camp Marc Lee in his memory. And I had the privilege of visiting Camp Marc Lee. I brought back some of the soil by the base of the sign there. Chris Kyle told me later, when they got back to the base, they were pretty sure there was no way Ryan could have survived his injuries. They were starting to try to grasp that they'd lost Ryan. They got some water to refresh themselves, and we've watched movies about our Navy SEALs. They seem superhuman to us at times. But I can tell you, those are my boys now. They're just as real as you or I are, and they were hurting. And the chief came in and said, "We just found 30 of the insurgents that just attacked us." And without hesitation, Mark looked at his chief and he said, "Roger that, let's go get them." They'd done their mission for the day. They could have stayed behind because I've been there. I know there's a Marine base on the other side, and they could have said, "Go get some of the Marines that haven't been out, that are fresh and ready to go." But that's not who these guys are. So they climbed in their vehicles and they headed back to that godforsaken place. They cleared several houses and they went in the last house Mark would be in. They cleared the bottom of the house and they proceeded up the steps. And they heard Mark yell, "On me!" And if you search, you know what he was saying. He was saying, "I got the lead on this. You guys follow me." And as they went up those steps, they drew fire through a window. And for the last, final time, Mark made that choice again to stand in the line of fire. He could have stayed below the wall. He could have waited for backup. But he probably would have lost half his platoon. And he made the choice to give his life so that they could live. And I think about the news that day, and while I had no choice, I could have refused to go home. I could have refused to listen to those officers that came to notify me that day. But while I had no choice of the news that day, I did have a choice how I responded. My choice was to put on Mark's boots and pick up his weapon and stay in the fight for every man and woman who's served, stay in the fight for every other family who's lost a loved one. And it's been my honor for the past 13 years to be able to see the impact that Mark is still making around the world in an amazing way. I would love to share with you that amazing letter that inspired us to start America's Mighty Warriors. The meaning of the name Mark means mighty warrior. I'm sure you'll agree. He lived up to that name. But the name of our foundation is America's Mighty Warriors. It's about every man and woman who served. It's about every other family who's lost a loved one. And this is the letter that inspired that. Glory is something that some men chase and others find themselves stumbling upon, not expecting it to find them. Either way, it is a noble gesture that one finds bestowed upon them. My question is, when does glory fade away and become a wrongful crusade or an unjustified means which consumes one completely? I've seen war. I've seen death. The sorrow that encompasses your entire being as a man breathes his last. I can only hope and pray that none of you will ever have to experience some of the things I've seen and felt here. I felt fear, and I felt adrenaline pump through my veins, making me seem invincible. I will be honest and say that some of the things I've seen here are unjustified and uncalled for. However, for the most part, we are helping this country. It will take more years than most expect, but we will get Iraq to stand on its own feet. Most of what I've seen here, I never really mention or speak of, only due to the nature of those involved. I've seen a man give his food to a hungry child and family. Today, I saw a hospital that most of us would refuse to receive treatment from. The filth and the smell would allow most of us not to be able to stand to enter, let alone get medicine from. However, you will be relieved to know that coalition forces have started to provide security for and supply medicine and equipment to help aid in the cause. I've seen amazing things happen here. However, I've seen the sad part of war too. I've seen the morals of a man who cares nothing of human life. I've seen hate towards a nation's people who's never committed a wrong, except being born of a third world, ill-educated, and ignorant to Western civilization. It is not everybody who feels this way, only a select few. But it brings questions to mind. Is it okay for one to consider themselves superior to another race? Surprisingly, we are not a stranger to this sort of attitude, meaning that in our own country we discriminate against someone for what nationality they are, their education level, their social status. We distinguish our role models as multi-million-dollar sports heroes or talented actors and actresses who complain about not getting millions of dollars more than they are currently getting paid. Our country is a great country. Don't get me wrong on this, otherwise none of us would be living here. My point of this is, how can we come over here and help a less than fortunate country without holding contempt or hate towards them if we can't do it in our own country? I try to do my part over here, but the truth is over there, the United States, I do nothing but take. Ask yourself, when was the last time you donated clothes that you hadn't worn out? When was the last time you paid for a random stranger's cup of coffee, a meal, or maybe even a tank of gas? When was the last time you helped a person with groceries into or out of their car? Think to yourself and wonder what it would feel like if when the bill for the meal came and you were told it was already paid for. More random acts of kindness like this would change our country and our reputation as a country. It is not unknown to most of us that the rest of the world looks at us with doubt towards our humanity and morals. I'm not here to preach or say, look at me, because I am just as at fault as the next person. I find that being here makes me realize the great country we have and the obligation we have to keep it that way. The 4th has just come and gone, and I received many emails thanking me for helping keep America great and free. I take no credit for the career path I've chosen. I can only give it to those of you who are reading this, because each one of you has contributed to me and who I am. However, what I do over here is only a small percent of what keeps our country great. I think the truth to our greatness is each other. Purity, morals, and kindness passed down to each generation through example. So to all my family and friends, do me a favor. Pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life to each other, so that when your children come into contact with a great conflict that we are now faced with here in Iraq, that they are people of humanity, of pure motives, of compassion. This is our real part to keep America free. Happy 4th. Love you. Marc Lee. P.S. Halfway through the deployment. Can't wait to see your faces. And I don't think I've once been able to get through that letter without getting choked up at the end. Marc successfully completed his mission. That young man was redeployed to heaven, and I will see him again one day. And for those of us that are still here, we still have a mission. One of the things that we started in America's Mighty Warriors, our first program, was those random acts of kindness that Marc talks about in the letter. And before I even had a foundation, I'd go out just in his memory and I'd buy a cup of coffee for a stranger and for a veteran or someone currently serving. We'd buy their meal or their tank of gas, and that's what I do on his anniversary. That's what I do on those difficult days, is I go out and do those things. Some of our volunteers have had the privilege of going with me when we do those, and it is so amazing and so cool to do that in his memory. We started doing retreats in Texas for other families who've lost a loved one. There's a 1,000-acre ranch out there that we rent. And we take those families out there, and there's kayaking, canoeing, and there's swimming pools and water slides and zip lining, and it's a way for them just to recreate. They can choose to do as much as they want or none. And it's been awesome to do that. It's a way we can let them know we'll never forget. We have a house in Surprise called the Heroes Hope Home where those families could go. We just added one in Florida called the Serenity Hope Home, where they can just go and get away, and we can let them know we won't forget your hero, and we won't forget you. We do a lot of advocacy and education. We've introduced legislation 4 months ago. It's the PTS and TBI Treatment Act. And with that, if we can get that approved, it will require the VA to pay for hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment, which is actually healing the brains of our veterans with PTS and TBI. We started our Helping Heroes Heal program that pays for that HBOT and for hormone and vitamin therapy. I get so frustrated when I feel our veterans are going to the VA, they're sent home. Travis over here shared his testimony, 40-some drugs that he was sent home to take with. How can that be good for anybody? 2/3 of those had a side effect that say may cause suicidal tendency, and we wonder why our suicide rate's so high. We've chosen to do things that are actually healing their bodies, and it's been amazing, and that's why we've been fighting for the legislation. It has been such a blessing to meet so many of you today. Buddy, come on up. Eric, if you'd come up, I got just a little token of our appreciation. Eric, you've just done an amazing job pulling this together and reaching out to us, and I love the hearts of them. I've got a framed copy of Mark's amazing last letter home with just my son in there. Thank you for your support. So thank you so much. Again, we would just like to say thank you. You know, Mark ends that letter with, to my family and friends, do me a favor, pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. And that's exactly what you guys have done. So thank you so much. God bless you.
You got yourself composed, buddy?